Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was assigned to Asuma and Team 10. Mizuki never got to shoot his mouth off at Naruto the night he took the Scroll of Seals. Other than skipping a half-manic monologue from him, what exactly did this change for everyone's favorite blonde ninja? Who knows? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 9, Turn So Cold. Naruto seemed to be a ghost for the rest of his shift, watching the path to the bridge as he sat against the gate and rolled through what his clone had told him of its time tailing the girl from earlier that morning. She was so nice, they had a wonderful talk. It was actually one of the most pleasant conversations that Naruto had ever had with anyone around his age ever. In just a small amount of time he had thought that he'd made a real friend, but then the clone had dispelled. The clone he had sent to tail Haku to make sure that she made it home, wherever home was, safe and unbothered by any of Gato's men, found something rather interesting as it shadowed Haku from a distance. Flashback, that afternoon. Man, Haku-chan lives way out of the way. Naruto clone thought to himself as he continued to shadow Haku, I guess it's a good thing that boss sent me after all. There was way too much of a chance of some jerk trying to do something to her with all of the ground she had to cover to get here. The sounds of something being smashed clean through before a tree fell nearby alerted Naruto clone and startled him. Oh, Haku-chan's dad must be a lumberjack or something. But didn't she say that he was supposed to be sick or something? Haku pouted and looked over in the direction that the tree fell from as she began to walk in that direction towards a man with camouflage pants and a sleeveless gray shirt. He had spiky brown hair and the lower half of his face was covered much like Kakashi's was, only with bandages. Zabuza-sama, I told you to wait until tomorrow. You can still make yourself worse by being up and about today. Go lay back down. Zabuza. Naruto clone thought to himself, that's the name of the guy that tried to take out old man Tajuna and Team 7, isn't it? How does Haku-chan know him? He stayed hidden and grit his teeth as he continued to listen. Haku. Zabuza growled in warning, tomorrow is the day that we're to attack. I can't go into it all stiff and rusty. This is nothing. I've been in bed all week, I need to get readjusted with my full range of motion here. I'm sure Kakashi isn't just sitting around licking his wounds. About that, Haku said, setting her basket of herbs down nearby and walking over to Zabuza, there are more ninja now. A complete team to go with the one already here. They were able to get reinforcements. From the looks of one of the ninja I met, it seems to be another squad of genin, however. Zabuza began pacing around thoughtfully. The numbers have the potential to be a problem, but if they're anything like the squad that came with Kakashi, they would mostly be cannon fodder if they were to openly get involved. He stopped and looked at Haku. I'm going to assume that you came across one while you were gone. Haku nodded, yes Zabuza-sama. A blonde Konoha genin. And you didn't just finish him off then and there? Zabuza asked incredulously, you're far too soft for your own good, Haku. He had me in close quarters, Zabuza-sama. I didn't have any weapons to fight with and he was more skilled than I am in close. Haku said, defending herself slightly, I simply tried to get some information from him from that point forward. I didn't learn anything substantial though, other than the added squad as our enemies. She fiddled with her kimono, getting the attention of Zabuza as he had never seen her show any kind of nervous tic before. I will be ready for whatever occurs tomorrow, however. Zabuza kept a firm gaze on her for a moment before letting it drop. There was time to talk about it later. Good. You're my secret weapon, Haku. You know how useful you are to me in my overall ambition. I can tell that you don't want to kill this boy that you met, but remember how close we are to our ambition, Haku. With this money we're closer than ever to affording the means to fund a proper rebellion. Haku nodded and walked over to pick her basket back up. Of course, Zabuza-sama. There's nothing at all to worry about. I know what this mission is to us and how important it is. Naruto's Kage Bunshin held back from jumping out and shouting at Haku the first things that came to his mind, complete with obscene insults and angry name-calling. Instead he simply began walking away, thinking of what it had just seen before it got far enough away and dispelled. End flashback. Naruto shook his head clear of the thoughts that had played through his head for hours upon hours. Was all of that really just a trick? She seemed so sincere. I really thought she was a kind person. Was all of that just in my head? He frowned as he remembered the first lessons he had been drilled on during what he now affectionately referred to as Hell Week with Shiho-chan. A ninja's job is to complete the mission. To cover their true emotions for the sake of professionalism and to snub out all weakness that could become a liability in the field. Success above ethics, personal morals, everything. What a bullshit rule. Naruto scowled. I'll take that as a guideline. No one follows the rules to the letter anyway, right? They were made to be broken. So this is what you've been doing while we've been climbing that troublesome tree. Naruto turned his head up to see Shikamaru walking towards him with his hands in his pockets. Well, it seems a lot better than what I was doing, that's for sure. Naruto raised an eyebrow at his teammate. I'm not doing anything at all, Shikamaru. Leaning against the gate that Naruto was sitting against, Shikamaru smirked. I know. It's great, isn't it? Naruto rolled his eyes as the two settled into silence for a short while. Shikamaru's eyes kept moving to Naruto's face and took notice of the look of deep thought that seemed rather foreign on the blonde's face. However, he chose not to speak on it, believing that anything he'd say would lead to a conversation that would be more trouble than it was worth. Naruto finally let out a sigh and broke the still silence that was only filled by the sounds of faint construction work a ways away. So you guys are done with tree climbing? Shikamaru nodded. It took you all long enough. Oh well, at least you guys finished before nightfall. So where's Chuji? I expected him to be with you. Shikamaru smirked. He headed back to the house to grab a bite to eat before coming here to meet me. He should still be a few minutes before showing up. Asuma headed back to the house with Chuji and Sasuke. They're probably going to rest. Meanwhile, at Tajuna's house, Asuma sat on the porch with a small scowl on his face and a cigarette in his mouth. I can't believe I've got to smoke outside. I'm a grown man, a high-level shinobi, and I just got kicked outside by a housewife with a nice body, cute face, and a deceptively terrifying scowl. He put the cigarette to his mouth and took a deep intake. Sigh, just another day in the life. He narrowed his eyes at someone dragging a body down the path and noticed that it was Naruto pulling a person behind him and stopping every few steps to slap the man in the head. I really hope you didn't drag him all the way through town. Naruto dropped the man in front of Asuma. If I said I didn't, would you give me a cigarette? I'm not wasting a cigarette on a clone. Are you a clone? Asuma asked, letting the smoke leak from his lips. No. Naruto said before Asuma raised his hand in a prepared flicking motion directed at his forehead. Okay, I'm a clone, damn it. Anyway. Naruto clone kicked at the man on the ground, eliciting a groan on pain from him. Boss beat up a ton of these guys outside of the bridge building site and he caught this one and made me bring him to you. He said you might know what to do. Asuma stared at the clone and then at the downed man before standing up and grabbing the man by his collar. Okay, follow me. Asuma dragged the man to the front porch and opened the door. Sasuke. If you want to learn something, then meet me in the woods in 10 minutes. All right. Sasuke said loud enough to be heard from inside. With that, Asuma started dragging the man off of the porch and towards the woods they had just left. He gestured his head at Naruto to follow him as the blonde clone fell in step, grateful that he didn't have to keep dragging Gato's goon any further. So are we going to interrogate him, Asuma-sensei? Yep. Asuma said without even looking down at Naruto. Ino isn't here, so we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. He saw Naruto clone face palm at forgetting about Ino's Shintenshin no Jutsu. Don't hit yourself too hard, brat. I need you here to pick this stuff up. You're going to have to learn how to do this eventually. He looked back at the man who was still unconscious. And you did a number on this guy, so I don't think we'll have to do too much to get him to crack. With Naruto and Shikamaru. By now Chuji had indeed made it to where Naruto and Shikamaru had stationed themselves, loaded down with snacks, and had taken to joining them in their guarding of the bridge site. It didn't take long for Chuji to pick up on Naruto's melancholy mood as well, except unlike Shikamaru he was actually willing to ask about it. Naruto, what's the matter with you? Did Kakashi-sensei do one of his speeches that sounded like they were nice but he was really chewing you out? Because if he did, I've got to say that we've all gotten at least one of those. There's no need to be down about it. Naruto shook his head. No, it's just. Well, I might as well tell you, it involves you all anyway. I can't wait until my shift is over and spring it on Asuma or Kakashi-sensei like that when you're just sitting here. This got both Chuji and Shikamaru somewhat on alert, hearing that they were involved. Alright, you know how you said you guys saw a hunter ninja working with Zabuza that helped him get away? Choji nodded. Yeah, he didn't seem any older than us, pretty small too, the guy didn't seem like he ate much, how did he carry Zabuza away so fast? Naruto almost chuckled, that's because the hunter ninja was a girl. Did they have black hair? Pretty soft-spoken. He got a nod from Choji and whatever little humor he had faded. Yeah, that's Haku ch. I mean that's Haku. I met her this morning in the woods, a clone tailed her home to keep her safe, he found out she was with Zabuza. Shikamaru finally weighed in on the whole situation, you said your clone followed her and found Zabuza. Do you know where that is exactly? Naruto looked over at his teammate, yeah. One of the things I'm really good at is remembering how to move through areas, directions, and stuff like that. He looked over at Choji who had his eyes locked on Shikamaru before he himself turned back to the lazy pineapple-haired boy, you have a plan already don't you? Shikamaru shut his eyes and adjusted his position against the fence to make himself comfortable, ask me later. He said dismissively, whatever it is we're going to do next is going to be a serious bother. I'd like to enjoy the little bit of downtime I'm getting between climbing that tree and what we're going to have to do about what you just told us. So you're not going to tell us? Naruto asked, getting no response from Shikamaru. Choji patted the blonde on the shoulder, you should know by now Naruto. He isn't going to tell us here because he'd just have to repeat it later with everyone else. We're going to have to wait until tonight. Naruto growled lowly, hey calm down. You're probably just cranky because you haven't eaten all day. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest, I'm not pissed because I'm hungry Choji. Naruto's stomach then growled in dispute, but it sure isn't helping my mood any. With Asuma and Naruto clone. Asuma and Naruto clone had quickly been joined in the woods by Sasuke after Naruto clone had tied the man they dragged out there to a tree. Sasuke looked down at him and over at the eldest shinobi on the scene, so what are we doing now? He still had energy to burn after finishing tree climbing training and it didn't sit right with him to stay in the house and do nothing. Whatever Asuma had called him here for was good with him as long as it was productive. Asuma pointed at the thug tied to a tree, we're going to interrogate this guy and work the information of where Gato is and what his plans are out of him. And you two are going to be the ones to do it. Us. Naruto clone asked his sensei before he and Sasuke looked at each other and down at the thug, how the hell are we going to do that? Asuma went off to the side and leaned against another tree, you're going to do it any way you want to, just leave him in one piece. If you can't do it I'll just have Ino pull it out of his head when she gets back later this evening. He pulled out another cigarette and sparked it up, get cracking. Sasuke sighed and looked at the unconscious man, well we might as well get started. Wake him up Naruto. Yeah. Naruto clone said before cracking his knuckles, should I be nice? Sasuke shrugged, prompting Naruto to do the same before he slapped the man hard across the face. I thought you were going to be nice. Sasuke said with a raised eyebrow. Naruto clone smirked, that was me being nice. There are way worse ways to wake someone up. He noticed the man coming around and crouched down to his level, nice to see you awake again. Fucking brat. The thug mumbled through his jaw that Naruto had injured earlier, why am I here? Sasuke moved forward, tell us everything you can about Gato. What he plans to do about us, what he plans to do with the bridge, where he is, everything. The thug spit at Sasuke's feet, like I'm really going to tell you baby-faced runts anything. I get good money for what I do. I'll never turn on that. Naruto clone walked forward and poked his finger into the man's jaw eliciting a cry of pain from him, Gato isn't going to pay you if you're gone. We can keep you here for as long as we want, and this is deep in the woods, at the part that no one goes to. You aren't going anywhere so you'd better tell us. We'll probably let you go. Naruto clone stopped pressing against the man's pained jaw and let him speak again, you kids are all going to get hurt, bad. Walk on home boys. We can't. Naruto clone and Sasuke both deadpanned at him before Sasuke spoke up, you've got the west coast of the island all choked down and every port full of your goons. How are we supposed to leave even if we felt like it? A laugh came from the man tied to the tree, heh, tough luck for you both then Junior. Now untie me and let me go. I've got to go drain the head if you know what I mean. Naruto clone and Sasuke both walked away from the man where the blonde of the pair started whispering, "Okay, I have no idea how to go about getting this guy to talk other than beating the crap out of him, and that'll take all night. We might as well wait for Ino if that's what we're going to do." Sasuke scowled slightly. He didn't like the idea of not being able to do something. Some punk-ass thug tied to a tree wasn't going to hold out on him if he could help it. Sasuke began to think before an idea hit him. "Okay, I think I've got something. Just follow me on this one." Without waiting for an answer, he went back over to the man tied to the tree and crouched in front of him with his elbows resting on his knees and one fist resting in his other hand in front of his mouth in a stoic stance. "Okay, fine. We're going to let you go. Finally," the man said, "no matter how much you kicked my ass anyway, I was never going to say anything." Sasuke's mood and face were unchanging, slightly unnerving the man at the stone-cold gaze that a kid could have. "You can go on back to Geto and tell him that you were held by the enemy and that they let you go without you telling them anything at all. I'm sure that'll work out really well." "What are you talking about, kid?" the thug said, squirming in his bonds as if he could feel Sasuke's coal-black eyes staring into his soul. "I didn't tell you anything." Naruto clone realized where Sasuke was going and decided to add in as well, "He won't know that. He'll think you talked even if you swear up and down that you didn't. He might even kill you anyway just because." He cut a man's arms off and strung him up in the center of town to be executed publicly. "You don't think he'd just get rid of you if he didn't trust you? And even if he doesn't?" Sasuke said before backing off and making a hand seal. A puff of smoke came before Sasuke appearing before them in the exact appearance of the tied-up thug. "We can just walk around town until someone notices this form. I think this can get you into some trouble with what we'll have it do, and then we'll turn you loose and see exactly how well off you'll be," Sasuke said in the man's voice. Naruto clone grinned fearfully at the man who was now looking at them wide-eyed. "We can just ruin your life like this, or we can make sure that you're a dead man walking by letting Sasuke here sabotage some of Geto's attempts to shake villagers down, or even have him take down more than a few of Geto's others to make them think you've turned on them." Naruto moved forward and crouched down, grabbing the man by the hair. "Do you get it yet? We're ninja. We're the people you see right now, and we're the people you never see at all. We can ruin your life and get away with it because we were never there. We're head and shoulders better than you and you need to know it. Don't fuck with us. One of me kicked 20 of your asses without flinching." The man's voice was now quivering. If what they said was true, he was screwed no matter what he did, and why should I even tell you anything, huh? Either way, I'm dead. Sasuke nodded as he straightened himself back up. "True, but if you tell us what we want to know, we'll give you a fighting chance to run away before we act and your boss figures out what happened to you. By the time he realizes that you were the one that said anything, it would be too late for him to do anything about you. You guys are nameless, faceless dumb muscle to him anyway. He doesn't know who you are." Naruto clone stood back up and dusted his legs off. "Then again, if you don't tell us anything, then we're going to do everything we just said we'd do to flush out more guys to interrogate, and then we're going to drop you in the middle of town and tell Geto's men exactly where you are. And then you won't even have a shot at getting away at all, the villagers won't help you, and you'll be all alone." Naruto clone and Sasuke looked at each other and smirked. "But it's your choice." Asuma let an approving smile come to his face as he saw the man hesitate to respond after Naruto clone's final statement, and that's checkmate. Granted, it was a guy that was some run-of-the-mill punk, and Naruto probably already had him scared of him by the time he caught him, but that was still pretty good. The man quickly started spilling what he knew in correspondence to Sasuke and Naruto clone's questions. "I should still have Ino go through the guy's head later." Later that evening, in the living room of the house sat the two teams in their entirety. Asuma had just told them everything that Naruto and Sasuke had gotten from the thug of Geto, and Naruto had told all of the others what he had found out from his early morning interaction with Haku in the woods. So, Ino started once all of the cards had been laid out for everyone to take note of. "You got within arm's reach of Zabuza's hunter ninja and you didn't end up in a fight?" she asked to Naruto, who looked away with his arms crossed. Naruto let out an indignant snort. "It was early, I had just woken up, I didn't know she was the hunter ninja. She was cute and nice, and I'm a gentleman." He grabbed at his hair and messed it all up. "What do you want from me? Kami, my head is spinning. I'm starting to hate my clones." The feedback is starting to piss me off. Naruto calmed himself and pulled his goggles down over his eyes so that he didn't have to directly meet anyone else's. Kakashi chose to step in at this point. Right, well now we know to be ready for tomorrow, and what have we learned from Gato's man? Sasuke spoke up after being more or less prompted to by Kakashi. Gato's going to wait until after we're done fighting and then he's going to bring all of his manpower to finish off whoever wins. We know where he is though. It's not like he's really even hiding. He has a mansion that he's been constructing about 20 miles outside of town for the last year or so. Shikamaru's brain was working overtime at this point, so it's not even complete. That means that no matter how many men there are guarding the place inside or out, there's going to be a way in. He then groaned slightly. Is anyone here other than one of the Jonin really good enough to get in and out without having the entire place try to tear them apart? The only person that raised their hands were Naruto and Ino, albeit slowly. Sakura looked at them both with a strange stare. And why do you two think you can do that and get away? Ino and Naruto looked at each other before shrugging and answering simultaneously, Shintenshin no jutsu / because I'm awesome. Ino looked over at Naruto and shook her head. Of course you'd say that, wouldn't you? Sakura let out a huff at Naruto's seemingly arrogant remark about himself. And what exactly makes you so awesome, Naruto? I could accept Ino's reason, but other than raising an army of clones to fight them, how would you get in and out unseen? Aw, come on Sakura-chan. Naruto said, I'm not bad. I painted the Hokage monument, didn't I? Shikamaru scratched his head as he worked out his explanation, and, well, you just said it. Naruto can make a ton of Kage-bunshin to directly attack the place, and while that's happening the real Naruto and Ino under Shintenshin on some guy, they wind up getting a hold of, can move around inside under the guise of saying that she caught him outside and brought him to Gato for interrogation. Sakura's eyes widened. That's actually not bad at all. But don't they just go away after one hit or something? Naruto nodded. Well yeah, but that doesn't mean that they can't raise enough hell to come off as a threat at least. He then looked down, but I'm more worried about the whole thing with Zabuza. We know where he is. What are we going to do about that? Asuma looked over at his male blonde student. Send a clone and tell them about what Gato is going to do. Hopefully they won't destroy it and they'll give you a chance to explain. He sighed. If they destroy it or don't believe us, then it won't matter anyway. A shake of the head from Naruto was his reply. No. I think that if I'm going to go, I should go myself. If I don't go, then they definitely won't trust us once the clone gets dispelled. He then thought to himself, maybe that whole thing with Haku wasn't a complete lie, maybe she'll listen to what I have to say at least. That's really not a good idea, Naruto. Shikamaru interjected, going all by yourself would just get you killed. If I don't go alone, then they'll be suspicious and attack us before we get close enough to explain. Naruto tried to defend, I've got to at least try to get them to trust me. Asuma patted him on the shoulder. If you go alone, then that would make them more suspicious since they know that we would operate in a group. Zabuza would be the one to pick you off for sure then, not the Haku girl, and you would be wiped out in a second by someone of Zabuza's caliber. If you think you have to go, then we'll go with you. Kakashi looked over at his fellow Jonin. Are you sure about this, Asuma? This is a very unnecessary risk to be taking the night before the attack is supposed to happen. A nod and a grin came from Asuma. I trust my kids. If Naruto says we can stop this without fighting, then I believe him. Besides, we'd have to fight anyway even if he was wrong. Why not get it out of the way? Naruto jumped up out of his chair. Yeah, absolutely, this can work. They have to know that Gato is a total snake. They should know that he might have pulled something like this. It's not far-fetched enough that they won't even think about it. He gave a grin to everyone sitting there. I can promise that at least they'll hear it out. Well, in that case, Asuma said, standing up as well, you should get your things. Team 10, it's time to head out and get this over with. Take what you think you're going to need, and Naruto's going to be leading the way. He's the one who knows where the hideout is. Hours later, the only thing barely illuminating the forest that Naruto, Asuma, Shikamaru, and Ino were walking through at the moment was the faint wisps of light that would poke through the leaves and hit the ground. They had to say, it was a great hideout. There was a very little chance of light slipping through at all, and that meant very bad things for anyone trying to navigate the area without previous knowledge of where it was. Are you sure you know where you're going, Naruto? Ino asked him in a hushed tone as they continued moving carefully through the woods. I mean, shouldn't we be waiting for tomorrow when we know the attack is going to happen, or going after Geto himself to end the whole thing? Shikamaru had his eyes sharp and at attention in case of some sort of trap on the way. Why wait to fight when we could possibly stop it now before it ever even happens? Either way we'd have to fight, at least this way we might not have to, or at least we can give them something to think about. Shikamaru nudged Naruto with his elbow. You're going to want to start making those Kagebunshin and have them start surrounding us for when they realize we're here. Naruto shook his head with a determined look on his face. No. That'll just spook them, won't it? They'll definitely try to fight once they see that. I don't want to fight them at all. And you think I do? Shikamaru said, but if we don't and they attack anyway then my best plan isn't going to be worth a damn. You're tying my hands here, Naruto. Sorry. Naruto said to him, not changing his tone, but since I've been a ninja all I've seen the whole job being about is a lot of backstabbing, power plays at others' expenses. I haven't seen anything honest or good about it yet. He shook his head. I don't want to be one of those guys that are all about nothing but the mission. People are important too. More important. Damn it. Shikamaru thought to himself with an audible sigh. This kid's going to get us all killed here. I should have just stayed home from that first mission to Kusa. What a troublesome mission. Naruto forced everyone to a stop when he recalled the area that his clone had stopped at, and nearby lay a fallen tree, evidence of Zabuza's attempt to get himself back up to speed. Taking a deep breath, Naruto took a few steps forward and inhaled deeply. Haku. He yelled, Haku, come out here. I know you're here and I know who you are. I just want to talk. He walked a few more steps forward and kept yelling. Come on, Naruto. Asuma thought to himself, his eyes firmly on their surroundings, mostly out in front of them. Get back into formation, kid. Don't make me have to go and get you. A mist began to settle over the area, something putting everyone on edge as they had all been told about how Zabuza fights. Naruto almost began to step back into line with everyone else before he found enough courage to stay out there, something that a chuckling voice found amusing. That's very brave of you, brat. Not very smart by any stretch of the imagination, but still very brave. Do you know who I am? The genin of the group felt the sensation of choking from the oppressive aura that had set over them. Ino couldn't even reach for a kunai in case they were attacked. Shikamaru wasn't that better off, but he at least was still thinking in overdrive. Come on, Naruto, get back over here. This guy's going to cut you in half if you don't. Naruto bit on his tongue to keep himself from moving from his spot and to keep from shaking. Why yeah, I know who you are. You're Mamakai Zabuza. I came here to tell you something. Tell me something. Zabuza said tauntingly, sorry kid, but I'm not the kind of guy that follows anyone's last words, wishes, requests, or anything like that. It's about you. Naruto yelled, it's about you and whatever it is that you have with Geto. Naruto recomposed himself and started speaking to the open air again. Look, I know you're going to attack tomorrow, or you were until we came here, but that's the thing. Geto's not going to pay you after you beat us and kill old man Tajuna. He's going to use a bunch of his own men to come in and finish off whoever's left, us or you. Go and confront him about it. Zabuza's voice echoed out in laughter. You certainly know more about ninja life than just the fighting part. That's a good little bit of deception, kid. Trying to use me to find Geto's base itself and take out your problem at the head right there. Naruto wanted to pull his hair out. We already know where he is, we just don't want to fight you over this. He's not going to pay you, so there's no reason for us to be enemies. I don't want to fight you. Naruto then hopped back as the ground in front of him took a deep gash from some huge weapon. You're damn right you don't want to fight me, but this isn't about me, is it? This is about Haku. Fine. Naruto said, trying to get his heart rate back down after almost potentially losing his legs. You're right. I don't care about you, not really. I'm here because of Haku. Even if everything she said and did was because she didn't know how to kill me in the best and easiest way, I want to believe that she's actually that kind all the time. And someone like that doesn't need to get betrayed by some loser like Geto. Haku. Zabuza called out, Haku is my weapon, brat. If I told her to right now, she'd put you down without a second thought. She may be kind, but she can kill her heart just like any good shinobi can, and she can get the job done. It doesn't matter if she was kind to you or not. Naruto looked down, fists shaking. Still, that shouldn't matter. This is the right thing to do. I told you what I had to say. If you want to try and kill us now, go ahead. All I have to say is that you're really stupid if you're going to fight us after all of this. He then pointed his finger in a direction roughly at his 3 o'clock into the mist and trees. I know you're there, you've been moving around the entire time. He then shifted to his 9 o'clock and pointed up in a tree. I know you're there too, Haku. Asuma looked down at his laziest genin after hearing the positions of Zabuza and Haku. You hear that, Shikamaru? Shikamaru nodded silently. My shadow can only stretch to reach one, it can't branch off far enough to get them both yet. Ino's jutsu might be able to get the Haku person, but if she realizes it's coming and what it is, she can move and we're out one of our side until Ino recovers. I swear, Naruto, you're a logistical nightmare. Zabuza's voice sounded relatively displeased at being discovered. I didn't know the kid was a censor. He's pretty good too, even if I wasn't really trying. I don't even care anymore. Naruto said as he turned back and started walking towards his squad. I told you what I knew, if you believe me or not I don't care. Fight us now or fight us tomorrow. I'm done with this. He said in an angry tone. His eyes flickered towards the tree that his sensory jutsu located Haku's silhouette for a moment before he let out another burst to reveal that she was still there. You could have at least come out and said something yourself. Asuma waited for Naruto to get back over to them before he grabbed him by the shoulder as they were walking away. Don't ever do anything like that ever again. I know you could find him, but even if he had attacked, could you have stopped him? Naruto frowned at his sensei's stern tone and shook his head. That means that I would have had to move in to keep you in one piece, and that would have left your teammates exposed to the other one in hiding. That could have gotten us all killed. I'm sorry, Asuma-sensei. Naruto said apologetically. It's just dash. He stopped trying to reason it out and just kept walking in silence. Ino kept looking behind them at the area where they were confronted. So did it work? Did Naruto get through to them? I don't know. Shikamaru admitted, but they haven't attacked us yet. That has to count for something. Hours later. By now the sun had begun to rise as Naruto led them back through the forest to return to Tajuna's house. As an afterthought and because of the habit he had developed while they were moving about, he let out a pulse of his jutsu and narrowed his eyes in anger. Asuma-sensei, we're being followed. It's Zabuza and Haku. Haku. He could feel himself getting angrier. I'm sorry, my plan was so stupid. Asuma let out a sigh. You stood up for what you thought was the right thing to do. I can't be mad at you for that, and we were going to fight them today anyway. It's better we do it here than near Tajuna. Asuma took a pair of unique trench knives out, zigzag blades on each knuckle and a blade coming out of the end of each. I can fight Zabuza, but he's going to use his mist. With Naruto I would be able to find him, no sweat, but I can't just break up the squad of genin with this Haku with him. Man, I wish Kakashi and his kids were here. Shikamaru and Ino moved towards their third genin partner with the female of the team speaking to her fellow blonde. This is going to be our first actual battle against another ninja. How are you feeling, Naruto? She asked apprehensively to the boy that seemed to be shaking slightly. Pissed. He replied, clenching his fists, more pissed than scared. I'm not even that scared. I got you all into this, and now we're fighting the people I tried to warn. Hearing the anger in his voice took the fear out of Ino's body. Naruto wasn't even flinching once he saw the mist begin creeping over them. This got her own confidence to increase, and looking at Shikamaru she could see that he wasn't about to waver either. Then we'll just have to show them what a bad choice they made when we kick their asses. Kick whose ass, little girl? Asuma wheeled around and blocked a slash from Zabuza's large sword with both of his trench knives. Kids, get back. I'll handle this. Worry about the other one drifting around somewhere. I know where she is. Naruto yelled, running off in that direction, his teammates trailing behind. Follow me, we'll be done soon, Asuma-sensei. Asuma smirked, I'm sure you will, kid. He then focused on Zabuza, so you're willing to be stupid about this? Naruto told you what you needed to know and you're still going through with the job. I can just complete the mission now and find Gato after I'm done. Zabuza said offhandedly, if he's really going to not pay me then Haku and I will get rid of him, simple as that. Until then, I'm still under contract so to speak, and I'm not hedging my bets on some bleeding heart genin. This mission is more important than you know. You're damn right it is. Asuma growled back, this bridge is the only way that these people can be free from Gato. We're not just fighting because it's our mission, this is the right thing to do. He pushed back and squared off against Zabuza, besides, my team won't lose to your fake hunter ninja. Zabuza laughed as he faded back into the mist, Haku is far from a fake. She's more than enough for your little team of baby ninja, just like me against you would be overkill. At least when I fought Kakashi I knew him from sight. I don't even know who you are. Asuma chuckled, heh, I know I left Konoha for a few years but I thought I was pretty famous from what that bounty of mine said. Oh well. He made a set of hand seals and kept the last one intact, Futon, Daitapa, wind release, great breakthrough. From Asuma came a rather powerful blast of wind that blew all of the mist away, leaving him in the far more visible early morning forest. That's much better. It's going to be a beautiful day isn't it? Zabuza grumbled to himself lowly from his hiding place, yeah, beautiful. It'll be the last sunrise you'll ever see. With Team 10. Naruto stopped with Ino and Shikamaru bringing up the rear, all prepared to fight. Naruto growled angrily at not only being deceived, but at being ignored and then taken advantage of as well. Haku, get out here. Naruto and the others waited for a moment before he yelled again, I know exactly where you are. Get out here. Again, he got no response. Tajuya Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. A mess of Naruto clones went into the woods. Before long the sound of multiple faint pops came from the foliage. Shikamaru hunched down, ready to move. Here we go. From the woods in a blur flew Haku, right at Shikamaru and Ino before Naruto jumped in between her and them and took a swing at her with a kick that missed when Haku jumped away. Naruto-kun. She said as she stared down Naruto, backed by his team, I really don't wish to fight you, but you're in the way of us and the bridge builder. I already told you everything you had to know about your mission Haku. Naruto said to her coldly, I told you that the guy paying you was going to stab you in the back once you completed it. I told you what was going to happen today once you tried attacking the bridge. You chose to do this anyway. There was nothing I could do. She said, her face obscured by a mask and her clothing a type that was what probably fooled Team 7 into believing that she was a hunter ninja. That seemed to be what Haku was good at, deceiving people like him. Zabuza-sama thought you were attempting to deceive him, and he had to take advantage of finding where Tajano was without having to wait for him to get to the bridge. Naruto's usually exuberant blue eyes didn't hold any speck of their usual kindness in them. I don't have anything else to say to you Haku. We're going to beat you and you're going to fail. Then you'll see firsthand that you were wrong. Haku pulled out a senbon, putting the rest of the team on edge. I can't lose here. Zabuza-sama's ambition is resting on us obtaining the money that we need from this mission. Losing her would mean the end of his dream and I cannot allow that to happen. I'll kill you all if I have to, all to help Zabuza-sama with his dream. That is my job as his tool. For what it's worth Naruto-kun, I hope you can forgive me for this, for what I did and what I'm about to do. Shikamaru had his eyes locked firmly on Haku. Naruto, I need you to slow her down. She moves faster than my shadow can go. Ino won't be able to pick her off either if she stays moving at this same speed. Can you do it? Naruto punched his palm, for sure. I know I can do it, just be ready, and if she gets past me before you can get her, get ready to fight. Naruto took a breath and rushed at Haku, making a contingent of 4 clones to head in with him. The senbon in Haku's hand found itself deposited through one of the clones, dispelling it, but with 3 clones and the original Naruto remaining, she found herself in hot retreat to avoid Naruto and his clones, who were actually pretty fast. He's not just sudden with his subtle movements like I saw yesterday morning, he's actually very fleet-footed. Shikamaru watched Naruto and his clones pursue Haku as he remained at the ready to engage with his jutsu. Naruto knew right off the bat when we were put on this team that he was the muscle, in every sense of the word. At first Ino and I were around his speed, but he just rocketed past us on that front. Now he's the fastest and strongest of us, and with those clones he can prepare in advance. I have tons of soldiers to work with, but now's not the time for a plan like that. There's no way to set it up and no way for all of those numbers to aptly take on a single opponent. Ino watched Naruto fight as well as another two of his clones found themselves vanquished by Haku's ranged attack. Naruto's really not nervous at all about fighting an enemy shinobi. Is he really that angry that he isn't scared at all? Well, if he's not going to be scared, then I won't be either. I just have to be ready to back him up. Shikamaru and I are no good in a close-up fight, and throwing any kind of weapon from here wouldn't help him at all. I can't fucking get a hold on her. Naruto thought to himself as he found Haku always just out of his reach. All he needed was a mere tap. Just his fingers brushing something on her would be all that he needed to slow her down enough to grab her and unleash hell on her up close, but she had clearly picked up something from the way he fought when they first met, because she knew that if he got a good hold on her it was game over. I need to cut her off, or corral her. Shikamaru can stop her and Ino can finish her, all I have to do is slow her down. There's lots of moisture in the air for me to work with against you. Haku said to Naruto as she continued to stay just out of his reach, knowing that if he laid a hand on her he would quickly overpower her. She was also slowly leading him away from his team, but he was tougher to coerce away from them than she figured he would be. He would always jump back and force her to come towards him to continue engaging. It's too bad, Naruto-kun, but you and your team cannot defeat me if you're the only direct fighter that you have. Once I get rid of you they'll both fall easily enough. Naruto and his last remaining clone were lunging at Haku with everything that they had in their arsenal to get close, but with Haku in a strict mode of backpedaling there was only so much that he could do. She was leading him, but where? His team was close by enough to keep her from trying to fight him directly, but she was still staying active. He slowly found himself catching up to her as he could swear that his fist almost hit her mask one time. Come on, a little closer and I can grab her. Haku could have gotten away from Naruto any time she wanted. He was fast, very fast for a new genin, very fast for any genin period, but the name of her game was speed all the way, and she had just been baiting him the entire time. She let him think he had been close to hitting her the entire time so that he wouldn't know where she was leading him. The day they met hadn't been the only day that week she had been in these woods, and on one of her excursions out that way she found a little something useful. That's close enough, Naruto-kun. Haku said as she kicked it into second gear and got a good distance away from him before coming to a stop. Now. Sensatsu Suishao, 1,000 flying water needles of death. Naruto looked around and saw that he and his clone were now standing at the edge of a lake that Haku herself was standing atop. I chased her to a lake? And she even got me to stop short before I realized it. An uncountable number of needles rose from the lake, all pointing at him and his clone on all sides. Naruto's clone quickly grabbed Naruto and threw him into the air just as the needles came to bear and impaled the Kage Bunshin, ending its existence in a puff of smoke. Naruto landed back on the ground glaring at Haku, who was calmly standing on the surface of the water. The boy didn't say a word. He simply reached inside of his open orange vest and pulled out a Fuma shuriken that he quickly unfolded to its full point before hefting it across the water. Haku had her eyes beaded on it all the way through and jumped out of its path only for the shuriken to burst into smoke, and out from it rushed Naruto. Before Haku's foot touched the surface of the water to land from her dodge, Naruto had grabbed a firm hold of her loose sleeve with a victorious smirk on her face. Isn't this familiar? Only I'm not letting go this time. A sharp yank on the sleeve pulled Haku towards him, where he hit her in the body with a hard knee strike. Haku doubled over his knee and let out a pained grunt. His raw physical strength is greater than mine. He's smaller than me, but his frame packs a lot of muscle. She thought to herself before she found herself jerked upright by the collar of her battle kimono with both of Naruto's hands. A hard headbutt was what met her that she could feel through the mask. Having had enough of getting beaten up, Haku freed herself from his grasp by ripping the collar of the kimono, revealing the dark green turtleneck sweater underneath. She quickly got herself away from Naruto and looked down at the surface of the water where a line of shadow was trailing away from him. In the bushes surrounding the lake, Shikamaru cursed to himself, "Damn it! I was too slow. Naruto had her for a good long time and I couldn't finish." Ino was hidden along with him watching Naruto and Haku square off again. Do you think he can get her again? That trick with him switching with a clone and transforming into the shuriken was one of his best ones that I've seen him practice. Shikamaru grit his teeth. He can do it, Ino. Naruto isn't the kind of guy that's all tapped out of surprises at a time like this. He'll pull something off. Inside his head though was a different story, all by himself out there, this is seriously troublesome. He's the only one out of us that can fight directly like this though, and I can't walk on the water even if I could. I just need to keep waiting and looking for an opening. Come on Naruto, just keep yourself out of trouble and reel her in again. I won't miss twice. Ino was barely able to keep herself hidden as she watched. She could walk on water just like Naruto could, but in a battle like this she knew she had next to no chance. Haku would have gotten her with the water needle technique she saw Naruto's clone help him avoid earlier. What do we do, Shikamaru? What do we do? How can we help him? Almost beginning to hyperventilate, Shikamaru calmed himself down and put his fingers together in a circle. He shut his eyes and began taking deep breaths. I don't know. Give me a second. I'll come up with something. Come on. I'm no good to anyone if I panic. If my damn brain is all I'm good for to this team right now, then I'd better get to using it. Haku's eyes watched the shadow on the surface of the water trail back to the foliage at the edge of the lake. I can see that your team is trying to help you. I was right in assuming that you were the only direct combat type on your team. Along with being the censor of the squad, that's a lot of responsibility, Naruto-kun. You must be some shinobi. Naruto chuckled humorlessly. Dead last of my year actually. I'm nothing but a glorified human shield for those guys. If they kick the bucket, they have people that care about them. People will be sad if they die. Me on the other hand, I don't have anybody. He grinned, but the way his face looked as he closed his eyes showed that his heart wasn't into it. Sure, maybe 3 or 4 people would be sad for a little while if I died, but they'd get over it quick. They have lives and loved ones. That's why I don't have any problems with my role on the team. It is what it is. And I'll protect them if I have to. I'm glad to hear that. Haku said, when I told you that true strength comes from protecting those that you hold dear, I was being honest. I never lied to you once when we spoke. But I have someone to protect too, and his dream as well, and I cannot allow you to win here. After I finish you, I will have to dispose of your teammates as well. Naruto narrowed his eyes and formed his signature hand seal, 20 Narutos popping up around him with the same looks on their faces. Over my dead body, Haku. He said determinedly. Haku sighed and averted her eyes slightly, although Naruto couldn't see her face behind the mask. I was afraid that you would say that, Naruto-kun. She said reluctantly before making hand seals and putting Naruto on guard. Quickly, a large dome of mirrors formed from the water and froze over, trapping Naruto and his clones inside. Makyu Hyushao, demonic ice crystal mirrors. Haku entered one of the mirrors and her masked appearance appeared in all 21 of them. Now I'll show you just how fast I really am. How to train your genin. Tip 6. Your genin must trust in you and be able to trust in others. It seems like an obvious thing to say, but it bears repeating as it is one of the most important things that any ninja should know. The name of the game for the most part in the ninja world is deception. Every shinobi is going to run across it, and it won't take long for a young ninja's mind to become jaded towards the idea of trust, even towards their comrades. This is one of the reasons that D-rank missions are run, so that trust can be forcefully built up by genin spending time together and sharing experiences. As the senior ninja, and the first high-level shinobi that they'll be interacting with, the genin must know that you have their best interest at heart and that the things that you say are worth taking into account and being followed. The rapport that your young ninja builds with you as their sensei or with his/her teammates will be the basis of how they interact with any commanding officer or potential partner that they have for years to come, for the remainder of their careers even. Be casual with them, let them be themselves, don't let them feel like they should hide things from you. Let them know that even though you're in control, everything that you do is for their benefit, and that they must work as a unit to be successful. A ninja that cannot trust their own comrades is a ninja that will be a liability in high-stress or combat situations. Shiho. Chapter 10, The Red Eyes of the Devil. Asuma had his trench knives out and his eyes peeled for anything. He had managed to easily dispose of Zabuza's mist, but the man was still renowned for his stealth skills. It wouldn't have been a stretch at all for someone like Zabuza to be able to get the drop on him in a wooded area like the forest they were fighting in. It wasn't even a clearing. They were fighting among the trees. Okay. As long as he can't get the drop on me, then I have the advantage. He can't create his mist and we aren't near any water for him to use any of the Suten ninjutsu Kakashi told me about. Zabuza already knew where Asuma was, he was clearly just waiting for an opening to strike. Running around the area to look for him would do no good, so the only thing he could do was try to pinpoint his location from where he was standing, otherwise he'd just be giving Zabuza a license to stalk him down and kill him, missed or not. So why didn't you heed Naruto's warning? Asuma said, actually sounding rather cross at how this whole thing actually worked out. Gato's still not going to pay you even if you finish Tajuna off. Zabuza's laughter echoed evenly all around him, causing the laid-back Jonin to let out a curse at not being able to use voice to find him. I'm not going to believe the words of some bleeding heart brat just because you found my base and tried having a heartfelt conversation. He said, and when I kill you and Kakashi and then the bridge builder, I should still have more than enough energy to deal with things even if Gato's as foolish as you said. Asuma let out a chuckle. I know I don't have any cool nicknames like Kakashi has to help people recognize me, but I didn't win my ranking in a raffle or something, you know. After saying that, he jumped aggressively to the side to avoid a slash that took down an entire tree with one swing. Asuma turned to face the tree that had just been felled and could have represented his headless body had he not been faster, and I'm going to have to prove it for the first time in a while. Zabuza's voice rang out again, I'm sure you didn't. But Konoha ninja like you just aren't made of stuff that tough, the same thing I told Kakashi. When I was the age of your brats I had already taken more than my fair share of lives. Good for you. Asuma said dryly, not seeing what that had to do with him at the moment. Do you want me to tell you how cool you are or how scared I am? Oh, I know, you probably want a cigarette, right? Sorry, I don't share with people that try to kill me. Funny man. Zabuza growled out, well, I'll clear-cut this entire forest if I have to before I slice right through you. You'll be dead before the sun is fully up. Asuma sighed and held up his trench knives in a defensive taijutsu stance. I'd love for you to stop talking about it and go ahead and try it if you are actually going to do it. With pleasure. Zabuza said before a shadow dropped to the ground from behind and rushed at Asuma. A diagonal slash from a massive sword nearly sliced through Asuma as it cut into the ground, but Asuma was able to get himself to the side of the move and cut into the figure's hip with one of his trench knives. As he heard the splash of water hitting the ground, it was too much for it to be blood from a wound, and he kept himself ready and composed for the next attack. The next attack was Zabuza's sword flying through the woods swiftly, aimed right at Asuma. Seeing this almost made Asuma's jaw drop, were it not for the fact that if he had stopped to gawk at it, it would have been the last thing he would have ever seen. Jumping into the air to avoid the blade, Asuma missed Zabuza darting from the dark points of the forest that had still not been touched by the low light of the sun. Before he could touch the ground and regain footing, Asuma was knocked aside harshly from a kick by Zabuza that shot his body into a tree with a dull crack, hopefully the crack of the tree trunk and not one of his vertebrae. Man, my taijutsu is getting sloppy. I either need to take a more hands-on approach in helping Naruto develop his, or I need to find Guy when we get back. That was pathetic. Growling to himself at getting his solidly so easily, Asuma stood back up and noticed that Zabuza hadn't taken to hiding again as he had been before, choosing to instead retrieve his sword from the tree he had embedded it in. Asuma pulled out a kunai and threw it directly at Zabuza without any setup or indication of his actions. Zabuza merely rolled his eyes when the kunai was launched as he simply stepped aside. Do you really think that a simple kunai is going to dash? He was silenced when the kunai punched straight through the tree his sword was caught in. He looked and saw that it had been where his head had previously been level with. Turning back to Asuma, he saw that the Konoha Jonin had vanished from his sight, and while he didn't think Asuma on his level in that department, he was aware that a Konoha Jonin hidden among the trees was a damnably dangerous thing. They all damn near grew up in the fucking forest. He preferred being in the open and using his mist to mask his approach. With something like a forest this thick and with the trees so close together, any ninja worth their salt could find a way to turn the tables in this environment, and much like himself, from what had just been shown, Asuma would only need one shot at him to end the fight as well. When he comes out, I'm going to lop his head off and move on. But that kunai he used, is he a wind user? He must be, for the kunai to go through the tree that easily. Throwing Kubikari Boucho couldn't even get all the way through the way that little kunai did. Zabuza was beginning to realize he might have made a miscalculation. If this dragged into a battle of attrition, then he might not even have enough left in the tank to keep going and take Kakashi on after he won. A Jonin, no matter the village, even if he believed it was soft or not, was not to be taken lightly. However, having a genin like Naruto who seemed to be so pacifistic on his squad, he believed that the jonin was much the same way. You're not that bad for a Konoha ninja. Heh. Asuma said from where he himself was hidden, using his wind mastery to distort the air around him and space out the sound of his voice. Well, I'm kind of the son of the Hokage. If I didn't kick ass, I would never hear the end of it. Not being able to locate Asuma from the sound of his voice, Zabuza had to refrain from chuckling to himself. Apparently I'm not the only person that likes taunting people from the shadows. He thought to himself as he finally yanked Kubikuri Boucho from the tree. Just as the blade was freed, Asuma dropped from the branches above and immediately broke into a taijutsu attack with his pair of trench knives. Zabuza was able to use his massive cleaver to keep Asuma from striking him and cutting into him before he retaliated with a hard swing of his own. Asuma held his knives and defended the attack, but Zabuza's raw power broke through his guard and threw him back in a way. Stopping himself by backing against a tree, Asuma lifted his arms over his head to block a downward swing from Zabuza's sword, coming so close to being cut by the blade that it actually smacked against the metal of his headband, lightly enough to be safe, but hard enough to make an audible ping noise. Asuma grunted in effort of blocking the mammoth weapon. Shoving it over to the side and ducking out of its way as it finished its descent to the ground, Asuma rolled back to his feet and leapt at Zabuza from the side to make an attempt on him. Not fast enough. The former Kiryambu said as he stepped out of the way and let Asuma pass by him, only for a rather deep slash to form on his chest. Zabuza watched his own blood fly through the air and seemingly saw some of it stick to an invisible surface in midair for a moment. What the hell just happened? He thought to himself. He wasn't hurt enough to quit, not by a long shot, but not knowing what happened could only be a disadvantage. Asuma slid to a stop from his rushing attack and looked back at Zabuza and the wound he had made on the imposing ninja. Nice. Okay, let's get this started for real. Hopefully the kids are doing okay against their opponent. It's 3-on-1, it should be fine. Team 10 vs. Haku. This is so not cool. Naruto thought to himself as he took another set of senbon to various places on his body. Which one is real, dammit? He thought to himself, picking the needles out of his body as he stared at the dome of mirrors surrounding him. Haku's reflection, staring at Naruto impassively with the mask on her face, gave him no indication of where the next attack would be coming from. Please surrender, Naruto-kun. Haku said, almost in a pleading fashion, I do not wish to kill someone with a good heart like you. I'm not going to quit, Haku. Naruto said, gritting his teeth at the mere thought of giving up when his team and tons of people were counting on him. I think I've had enough of your funhouse mirrors from hell. I think I'll leave now. He said before letting the chakra under his feet fade, allowing him to fall under the surface of the water. As he tried to swim his way under the dome of mirrors, he learned that it wasn't a dome, it was an entire sphere of ice mirrors, and the ones underwater all had Haku's reflection brandishing senbon, ready for attack. Son of a bitch. Give me a break already. Trying to swim back to the surface was his only option as he was far slower underwater than he was above it. Creating some clones to form a defensive shell to surround him, he quickly made his way back up just as they were all punctured by Haku's metal needles and dispelled. Placing his feet back on the surface of the water, he began making movement, any kind of lateral movement. If he kept staying still, he would only be making himself an easier target for Haku, which she didn't really need him to do for her. It seemed that for as much as he had worked on his physical conditioning after seeing and being ragdolled by Rock Lee once, he was still nowhere as fast as he wanted to be, and Haku seems faster than Lee did. In his mind at the moment, the only solace he could take over the present situation was that he was the only member of his team currently stuck inside of the dome and getting systematically picked apart by the ice-wielding ninja. Naruto was far from slow, he was the fastest one on the team, not counting Asuma of course. He was leaps and bounds ahead of Ino and Shikamaru in that department. But he wasn't fighting Ino or Shikamaru, he was fighting Haku, and as long as he was stuck inside of this death trap he was just doing nothing but dragging the fight out for as long as he could. Neither of his teammates could beat Haku, of this he was certain. Confident in them he was, not for this. How would Shikamaru trap her if he couldn't even determine where she was? She was too fast for Shintenshin no Jutsu to hit her. How would Ino even begin to go about fighting her? If he couldn't win or if Asuma didn't show up, then they were screwed. Tajuyo Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. If he couldn't touch Haku, then everything he had learned about taijutsu to this point was useless, thus he needed to switch tactics a bit. Shakura Hankyuti to no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu. From within a thick shell of Kagebunshin that attempted to keep him covered as best they could, Naruto tried to pinpoint the exact location of Haku. Which mirror was she actually hiding in? After several attempts of trying to get a lock on her, he found himself unable to exactly do so. Every time he did it again, it would always say a different spot than it had previously. As the last few clones were defeated by Haku's speedy attack from out of his effective range, he came to a conclusion: she's moving between the mirrors. The reflections are an illusion, she only is really in one at a time, but she moves too fast for me to see. Creating more clones, Naruto watched as Haku seemed to stop playing around and obliterated them before he could even begin any kind of effort at freeing himself. She seemed to be his exact opposite style-wise. Naruto's entire fighting style was to close distance and batter his opponents into submission or incapacitation, either by himself or by the use of his clones. From what he had seen of Haku, she wasn't very good up close for someone trained by a guy carrying a big-ass sword like Zabuza. She chose to remain out of his range of effectiveness and pick him apart from afar. The senbon were beginning to wear on him. Shikamaru had his fists clenched tightly as he watched Naruto desperately try to escape from whatever Haku had formed to separate them from him. They had attempted to throw a kunai with an explosive note attached, however it was knocked from the air by a group of Haku's senbon and diffused in the water. Part of him just wanted to say to hell with it and charge out like a samurai or something, but he knew that would make him more of a liability than a help in this case, and then there was the key fact that he couldn't walk on water. Every plan he could think of would have Ino heading out there instead of him, and that would be worse than if he had been able to attack directly, so our strongest direct fighter is already out there in a fight and trapped against someone that's his exact antithesis. He wouldn't even need our help if we could just get him out of there. Ino, on the other hand, could walk on water, and she was having to physically grab onto the bushes they were hiding behind to keep from heading out there, because she knew once she got there, she would be of absolutely no help whatsoever. There was only one thing she could think of that would get him out, and she was the only one that could do it. Shikamaru. She finally said to him, gulping down some fear, "There's only one thing I can think of to help Naruto, and you already know what that is." "No," he said firmly, "we don't need to do that. There's another way, there has to be." Naruto's Kagebunshin no Jutsu was the most battle-ready technique they had at the moment. If this were a board game of some sort, he would be the piece meant for attack and maneuvering around defenses. Without Naruto, any strategy Shikamaru could create wouldn't have as much weight as it otherwise would have. They all knew who the workhorse of the squad was, and their team dynamic was centered around that fact. Ino wasn't stupid either. She had seen the fight up to this point, and she had also known just as well as Shikamaru did that Naruto in open space was perhaps one of the most dangerous genin period, rookie or not. Without him they were as good as a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Actually, more akin to a no-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, since Naruto was their most mobile member. Shikamaru. Ino growled out dangerously at the usually lazy ninja, "You know those strategies that we've spent so much time learning and drilling? Well, this is one of those situations. This is actually the best situation for one of them, and you'd better know which one it is. You were the one that came up with them all." Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at the scene and analyzed it as best he could while watching another horde of Naruto clones split up in an attempt to fool Haku and allow Naruto to escape. As he saw Naruto's clones and thought back to the team training they had done in the past and then realized how Naruto was surrounded, his eyes popped wide open. "Do you think he'll know what it is once you start it?" Ino scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Well, he'd better know. If he doesn't, then I'm screwed, but at least he'll be out no matter what. That's what's important about this. If he's outside, then we can win this no matter what happens to me in the end." Turning back to Naruto's bid to stay in the fight against Haku somehow, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. "Well, go then. And be careful." Ino grinned as she formed 3 hand seals and prepared to enter the battle. Naruto had taken to making formations of clones to get through, but no kind of setup he tried would throw Haku off enough to allow him to escape. "I should have figured that a phalanx only really works when you at least have shields though. Man, I'm stupid. But the 4 diamond formations of 5 clones should have confused her enough for me to get out." As fun as it was for him to be looking like a human porcupine and feeling like he rolled around on the ground with an actual one, he needed to get the hell out of there. He had been getting his ass kicked for long enough in his opinion, since letting go of his hold on his chakra and dropping underneath the surface of the water for a short nap started seeming like a more appealing idea than standing up with metal needles protruding all over his body and moving around. Naruto-kun, I'll only ask you this one more time. Please give up or I will finish you this time. Haku said to him, brandishing even more senbon from her person. What the hell, did she had entire bandoliers of the things strapped to her body underneath the kimono? There's a word that I'm looking for. Naruto said to her before creating 10 more clones and trying doggedly to get out one more time. No. I'm sorry then. Haku said before blasting the charging mass of clones with her weaponry. One of the clones thought fast and shoved Naruto out of the way of an attack, keeping the original from taking damage on this particular counter-attack by Haku. Naruto growled to himself as he looked around at all of the mirrors, if you were sorry we wouldn't be fighting. I wanted to help you, Haku, because I thought we were friends. We could have just attacked you and not warned you at all, and this is what we get for trying to tip you off. It is Zabuza-sama's will. Haku said sadly. Fine. Naruto said with a low growl in his voice, I guess I don't have anything left to say. You're going to try to kill us, and there's nothing I can do about that but put you down before you actually pull it off. He said that, but he couldn't think of a damn way out. He hadn't even touched the damn mirrors yet to see how durable they were. And then there were the damn huge gaps that he could have easily darted out of if he could have gotten to them, but no matter what he tried he wound up getting hit by acupuncture hell and thrown back. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. Haku said, holding the senbon up, prepared to throw them. Suddenly she went on her guard as a puff of smoke surrounded Naruto's body. As it cleared it simply revealed Naruto. But this Naruto didn't have any needles in him or any wounds on his body at all, what just ha dash. Before her statement could finish, the grinning, unscathed Naruto in the dome was surrounded by another puff of smoke, and as it cleared revealed a battle-weary looking Naruto, the one that had been there at first. That Naruto turned to run away and escape, but he didn't get far before Haku put him down with her senbon, and behind her mask her jaw dropped as it burst into smoke, leaving her alone in the dome. She looked at the lake area surrounding her dome of mirrors and saw nothing. Naruto was nowhere in the area that she could see. What just happened? Where did he go? Shikamaru smirked as a ruffle of sounds next to him signified someone's presence. Well, I have to say, I didn't think one of our plans would work in this situation. Ikeku Sankei Buritsuka Ou Hokai, collapsing point triangle swing, complete. Next to him, Naruto, holding Ino bridal style before crouching and setting her down low like both him and Shikamaru, was grinning like mad despite his injuries. Ino, when you used Kawarami to switch with me that scared the hell out of me. I didn't remember making any clones that got away from Haku that would have been able to do that. Ino's smile was so bright it could have lit up a dark room. Well, watching you get people all the time with henge made me realize that it's not a bad plan. I'm just glad you realized what was happening before she threw those needles at me. You sure hightailed it out of there with me once we were clear. Do you like holding me that much, Naruto? She joked before actually paying attention to his appearance. Now that they were free and clear for the moment, she was able to see all of the wounds that Haku had inflicted on him. Kami, Naruto, are you going to be alright? I'll be fine. He assured her tensely as he began pulling the needles out of his body. I feel more drowsy than anything. Naruto said, blinking back some fatigue. I'm never tired though, but all I want to do for some reason is shut my eyes. Shikamaru helped Naruto pull needles from places he couldn't see or reach. Team 7 said that the hunter ninja that got Zabuza away from them hit a pressure point on him that put him out cold. Maybe that's what was happening to you. Shit, I hope not. Naruto thought to himself as the last of over 12.5 needles fell from his flesh to the ground. He couldn't afford to start feeling sluggish because some pressure points took some good hits. His team needed him. They were about to come up with a counter-attack, and whatever the plan was, he was probably going to be vital to whatever it was. Asuma vs. Zabuza. The fight between Zabuza and Asuma was becoming a rather brutal close-up affair. After it became clear that neither of them much felt like jumping around the other, beating around the bush, they simply began trying to cut the other one down with their respective weaponry. However, Zabuza was having a smidge of trouble with Asuma for some reason. Zabuza held his blade up as a slash brushed the width of the sword. The thing about it was, Asuma's trench knife blades weren't even touching his sword. Trying to use his reach advantage for some reason just wouldn't pan out for him, maybe because when he thought he was several feet out of Asuma's range the man would still wind up hitting his sword. There was also the fact that Asuma was actually faster than he was. More than once Asuma had caught him flat-footed and had almost taken out his head while barely needing to get in range to take shots at him. Whatever he's doing is expanding the reach of his weapons. I can't see it, so I can't accurately judge the range that he's attacking at. That style was dangerous for someone who relied mostly on close-range fighting the way that Zabuza did to face off against. Asuma's taijutsu was purely intended for him to come close to making contact with his trench knives. His style was very hand-oriented. Something of a hard boxing style that even when he missed would allow him to cut his enemy if they were close enough, and most of the time they were. Zabuza seemed to have gotten the message early on and tried blocking Asuma's trench knives themselves instead of trying to dodge, so he's already worked out how Hein, Flying Swallow, goes. Has he? Points to him, I guess. Zabuza let out an angry grunt of exertion as another swing of his sword saw Asuma dance back out of his range. I can't keep wasting time with this guy, there's still Kakashi to deal with. Hasn't Haku gotten to finishing off those brats yet? She probably won't ever. Asuma said with a smirk on his face as he stayed ready in his boxing stance. My brats, as you like to call them, are damn effective. They have all kinds of premeditated plans for dealing with people stronger than them. They train against me after all. He neglected to mention that they had never really gotten him before, but that was because of his raw experience that helped him out when they made mistakes. 3-on-1 they've got all possible bases covered. Yeah, I'm so sure. Zabuza said sarcastically, that blonde brat that walked you right to my front door and thought he could leave. I'm certain he's a real killer. And there you go again. Asuma said in a rather disgruntled manner, the only thing you believe that makes a good ninja is how well they can kill. That's why your dream of overthrowing the Mizukage will never gain any traction. He could sense that he now had Zabuza's ire, who was going to lead afterwards. You don't know the first thing about being a leader. Your closest confidant is someone you see as a tool, expendable, and you're too aggressive for your own damn good. You couldn't even wait to hear what Naruto had to say towards Geto, didn't even listen for a moment. Zabuza rolled his eyes at having past events from Asuma. He was there, he knew what he had done, and he still couldn't care less about it. He had planned on killing Geto once they had gotten paid. The little runt seriously needed to watch who he was talking to, like he owned them in the future, if he actually lived past today. All Naruto's admittance told him was that he was right on the money and needed a plan once the job was complete. But Asuma continued, that kid has more leadership qualities than you do, despite the tactical error he made getting us out here, and I don't really see it as being that bad. We can win, because I don't have any problems at all with killing you myself. You're a really big talker. Zabuza said in amusement, you do know who I am, right? Even Kakashi was wary of me when he fought me. Yeah. Asuma said, that's because his genin were there and he had to watch them and Tajuna at the same time. I don't have to. I can just focus on kicking your ass and to hell with the collateral damage. I don't have to hold back like he did. Plus you can't use your mist on me, I'll just blow it away. There's no body of water for me to use. Zabuza thought to himself, damn that brat for discovering me before they could get closer to water. Setting his sword for another attempt on Asuma's life, he prepared to come at the man again. Asuma narrowed his eyes in preparation for the charge and made a set of hand seals, Katon, Hai's Kishao, fire release, ash pile burning. From Asuma's mouth, a thick black powder spewed forth and covered a wide-scale area all over the immediate area of battle. Zabuza immediately shut his eyes, and the wraps around his nose and mouth were able to filter out most of the bad air generated by Asuma's technique. Does he really think this is a disadvantage? He might as well have set my mist back up for all the good this will do him. If he can't see me, that's all the better. He thought as he began moving through the ash to find an angle to attack Asuma from. Time to smoke you out. Asuma said before clicking a piece of flint in his mouth with his teeth, creating a spark that ignited the ash and caused a massive explosion. Team 10 vs. Haku. Haku stayed within the confines of her ice mirrors on the lake as she eventually located Team 10's hiding place not far from shore. She would have attacked them, but it was 3 of them against 1 of her. She would have to leave the mirrors. She didn't think she could trap them all, especially after they had already seen the move, and attacking them would mean having to again engage Naruto on his terms, and she had learned a rather painful lesson the last few times he had hit her, telling her that a fight where he had the opportunity to close the distance wasn't to her advantage. For both sides at the moment they were at a stalemate. Haku wasn't about to leave the mirrors, but the longer she stayed in them the more chakra she wasted. On the other hand, Team 10 didn't have to move at all. Haku was their responsibility to handle, and they could just keep her there if they had to. However, depending on who won the battle between Asuma and Zabuza raging on, meantime it could either be a good move, or the strategy that would seal their fate. That was the plan for both sides at the moment. Hold out for the time being until the other 2 finished their battle and arrived to help them finish. It was the plan until the sound of an explosion came from within the forest, easily getting the full attention of Team 10 and especially Haku, who knew that Zabuza didn't use attacks that had fiery explosions involved. Zabuza-sama. Haku rushed from her mirrors and let them fall into the water as she took off across the surface of the lake to head towards Zabuza and ensure that he was safe. She started moving faster as she saw a shadow move from the brush towards her across the surface in an effort to cut her off at the pass. Haku diverted her direction to dodge the shadow moving at her. She had no clue what it did, but she wasn't curious enough to let it catch her so that she could find out. Moving to avoid the shadow as she made it to land, she almost wasn't able to avoid the attack from a contingent of Kagebunshin that had been lying in wait. Once Haku started to move back through the trees, she found herself utterly bogged down from going any further by a coordinated assault from Naruto's Kagebunshin. How can he still keep going? He can still make so many and have them fight so well. Ignoring that train of thought as she had to get to Zabuza if that fireball that had erupted from over 5 miles away was any indication of how his fight was going. Get out of my way. I need to get to Zabuza-sama. You aren't going anywhere. The clones shouted as 6 of them moved in while 5 more stayed back and attempted to pelt her from above with weaponry. Naruto, and by proxy his clones, weren't Tenten, thus all that the kunai and shuriken from above did in the end was force Haku off of her intended path. It didn't even slow her down or stop her, as a pair of Naruto's infantry clones were put out of commission swiftly by 2 well-placed senbon from Haku. After dealing with 5 more clones that attempted to cut her off and stop her, it was quite clear that she wasn't going to be facing off with the original as long as she was rushing to reach Zabuza. Naruto would simply stay in the shadows and keep swarming her with clones, and her speculation was proven correct as she systematically found herself forced to take detour after detour lest she find herself surrounded or cornered by the dogged pursuit of the never-ending clones. Trapping Naruto truly had been her best option. Even staying on the lake to fight him would have been better than what was currently taking place. In the forest it was his world, and for the time being the denizens of the woods were him and his Kagebunshin, and they reigned supreme. As the sun was now high enough in the sky to stamp out all traces of night and leave no doubt that a new day had risen, Haku was moving as if she were a trapped animal that had not resigned itself to capture yet. Anything that moved in her field of awareness was completely out of luck, as she lashed out quickly and violently with her seemingly endless supply of senbon, not sparing a second or in some cases single glance at her target, only letting the popping sound of dispelling clones tell her that she hit her mark. She couldn't lose them. For every clone she killed off, several more would emerge. He had 2 ways of tracking her. One was to use his sonar jutsu to hone in on her general direction and then send Kagebunshin that way to check for her. The second way was when Haku killed a clone he would be able to tell where she was. However, if she just let them live they would still find her anyway. She had long since passed the point of panicking. Turning around she found more clones on her tail. However, when she turned forward to work out a path to take to lose them or prepare to dispose of them, she saw that dimmed shadow moving along the ground towards her again, and this time she couldn't run away. She was moving right towards it, and stopping on a dime would have brought her efforts to reach Zabuza to an end. The only option she had left was an attack in the general direction of the shadow. She couldn't see the source of it, but she could estimate as her eyes worked double time and found what she figured to be a good 45-degree estimation of the origin of the shadow. Figuring that no matter what she was going to be hit by the technique, whatever it did, Haku decided to at the very least go down swinging, or throwing in this case, as she let loose 2 fistfuls of her rather deadly senbon in front of her and behind her to rid herself of Naruto's clones. Her gamble paid off, as not only did she destroy the clones, the shadow retreated away from her and in the direction she threw. A rustle of bushes determined that someone had dodged and had been forced to let go of whatever jutsu was being used. Narrowing her eyes at the sight, she honed in on a tuft of black hair sticking out from the cover of the plant life. Quickly letting loose a barrage of needles, the figure stood up, just as the needles hit him. Ugh, troublesome. Shikamaru grunted out as he staggered back from the hits he had taken. That almost worked. Sick of having gotten the run around from this team of rookie genin for so long and having had them keep her from getting to Zabuza to assist him, Haku didn't hesitate as she let fly with another set of senbon that hit Shikamaru dead on and got him to let out a gasp before falling back against a tree and slumping to the ground. Haku moved in to ensure that he was out of commission, but a feminine shout of, "Shikamaru!" alerted her to the blonde female member of the squad heading out from her own hiding place nearby as she tried to cut off the ice-wielding missing ninja from doing further damage to her teammate. Ino tried her best to engage Haku in close as she saw herself as the only defense Shikamaru had until Naruto was able to catch up to her himself and fight. His clones had served their purpose for what they had been intended for, but that plan had fallen to hell once Shikamaru was hurt. Unfortunately for Ino, after dealing with Naruto and his clones, which had a far greater capacity in close than her, and with the fear, adrenaline, and anger moving through her system by Zabuza's unknown fate and the fact that she was being held back from helping him by these kids detaining her, Haku was quick and merciless to the young girl. While Haku would be the first to admit that her taijutsu was absolutely abysmal, she had her senbon in hand, and Ino wasn't as good at defending attacks as Naruto was from someone faster than herself. Ino let out a desperate gasp as Haku seemed to float around the punch she threw to make her way to the girl's back. Ino desperately tried to turn to defend herself, but there was nothing she could do. She's so much faster than Naruto. She was never able to finish her thought as a needle found its way to the side of her neck, forcing her eyes to roll into the back of her head and dropping the girl to the ground. With the two genin around her overcome, Haku didn't feel like sticking around to try and deal with Naruto once he was able to arrive with his seemingly infinite backup. Sparing one glance back at the unmoving genin duo, she kept moving towards where she saw the explosion from earlier. Haku's barrage on him inside of the Dome of Mirrors had taken a toll on Naruto. Once the needles were removed from his body, he realized that he had been hit in areas by Haku that would intentionally slow him down. A few more and he wouldn't have been able to even stand up, let alone continue to fight. Ino had gotten him out at the right time. His mobility shot, Naruto made up for his new lack of speed by making 3 Kage Bunshin, his chakra dispersed evenly between them, and forced them to provide the raw chakra for his clones that he would use to corral Haku towards Shikamaru's shadow. After bouncing her around for a bit and allowing Shikamaru and Ino to get into their positions, his clones did their jobs perfectly. They were slower, but the sheer amount of them that he was able to create made up for his own physical deficiencies. He also discovered that if he used Shakura Hankyuti to no jutsu, his clones could get the same sight of the area that he could. This was by the main Naruto, who lagged behind to triangulate Haku's position and guide his clones. He had been impressed and unnerved when he realized the rate that Naruto was cutting a swatch through his clones, especially when she started taking out his platoon commander clones, eventually keeping his company of Kage Bunshin from being able to reform. When she finished off his original 3 clones, keeping him from continuously flooding the area near Haku with clones, his blood ran cold, especially when a quick check of his sonar jutsu let him know that Haku was right by Shikamaru and Ino. His legs had never burned so intensely in his entire life as his muscles seemingly demanded him to stop and rest, but he continued on. Another check revealed that Haku was no longer there, but 2 bodies were, and they weren't moving. As he burst into the area, Naruto first laid eyes on Ino, on the ground face down and not moving. Ino. He ran over to her and turned her over to find that she gave him no reaction whatsoever. Ino, come on, wake up. Reaching to test her pulse, he pulled his hand back like he had been burned when he didn't find one. No. Come on, you're tougher than that, just wake up. A cough to his side forced him to turn his head to find Shikamaru sitting against a tree, his body full of needles as opposed to the single one in Ino's neck. Carefully picking his blonde teammate up, Naruto carried her over to Shikamaru and set her down by him so that he could check him over. Shikamaru, I'm sorry. I just wasn't fast enough to keep up. You guys can't die on me here. This was our first real mission. Second real mission, idiot. Shikamaru said quietly with a smirk on his face, We finished that first one, so I guess we weren't completely worthless, right? And as long as that bridge builder guy is safe and finishes the bridge, we finished this one too. Naruto shook his head desperately as he felt tears stinging his eyes. No, we didn't, damn it. This mission isn't successful if we all don't make it back to Konoha. Come on, you lazy bastard, show some fight for once. Don't you fucking give up. Shikamaru's eyes started closing, crying, Naruto? Man, that's so uncool, but then again you weren't ever really one of the cool guys, just like me and Chuji, that's what I like about you. He finished as his lids closed completely. After saying that, Shikamaru's body went limp against the tree and didn't move again, just like Ino. Naruto looked back at the young Yamanaka girl and couldn't keep his eyes on her as he looked down at the ground. With one hand he closed her eyes before punching the ground repeatedly, hard enough to break his hand. With his good hand, Naruto gathered the chakra to make Shakura Hankyuti to no jutsu and let out a pulse that allowed him to see Haku moving swiftly towards where he presumed Asuma and Zabuza were. Clenching his jaw shut tightly as tears were freely falling down his face, he couldn't comprehend how angry he was. It was his fault. He knew he was the one that needed to be near them in case of trouble, as he was the only one that was suited to deal with an opponent as dangerous as Haku directly, but his body chose to crap out on him when he needed it to go a bit longer. And now his teammates were dead. All because he wanted to warn someone that he thought was his friend. All because of Zabuza and Haku. Naruto stood up straight, pulled down his goggles over his eyes to hide his tears, and finally let out an anguished yell of rage and sorrow, Haku. He then immediately charged after Haku, dead set on finding her and keeping her from bringing harm to his sensei the way she had done to his other squad members. This was a situation that he had created, and it was his fault. He was the one that had to handle it the best way that he could. Asuma vs. Zabuza. Asuma had cleared back from the explosion he had caused, as it had started something of a small forest fire. Asuma was sure he could put it out, but at the moment he needed to confirm his kill. He just really wasn't looking forward to going inside of a fire to find Zabuza's corpse. There was no way he survived that though. Zabuza had tried to conceal himself inside of the ash from Asuma as a poor man's substitute for his mist. Too bad for him that was only part of Asuma's jutsu. Whew, blew his ass to kingdom come. He said, looking at his handiwork, trying to peer through the flames. Wish I could see in there though. A yell of pure anger erupted from within the flames as Zabuza emerged and swung a deeply cracked Kubikari Bouchu at Asuma, who jumped backwards but still got slashed violently across the chest of his flak jacket. The density of the jacket was probably the only thing that kept Zabuza's attack from getting through to his organs and finishing him off right there. Dropping to one knee momentarily before standing back up, Asuma clutched at his wound and glared at Zabuza. How did you possibly walk away from that? You were right in the middle of it. He then noticed that much of Zabuza's body was covered in deep, intense burns. Most of his front was horribly wounded. His facial wrappings were burned mostly off of his face, revealing his shark-like teeth as he breathed heavily, trying to keep himself out of shock. Kubikari Bouchu kept me from kicking the bucket on that last one. Zabuza admitted, pointing at the crack on the blade that seemed to cover the entire sword. That was until it seemed to absorb Asuma's blood that it had been coated with. After taking in all of his blood that it had taken on, it reformed to its original perfect appearance, not a crack or nick on it. Got to love this thing. Asuma groaned in exasperation as he got back into a shaky taijutsu stance. This is ridiculous. I'm seriously losing blood here, and that last attack should have blown some limbs off. A sword is that dense that it was able to take most of the blunt concussive force from the explosion. You're good. Zabuza said, slowly lifting his large sword up in a basic kendo stance. You and Kakashi are the best fights that I've had in a long time. You say that like I've already lost. Asuma said, gripping his trench knives tightly. Zabuza had gotten him good with that last attack, but from looking at Zabuza, the former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist had also taken some serious damage from their battle. His injuries were more numerous than Asuma's, but the blood loss from the Konoha Jonin could be detrimental to his success in battle if he couldn't end it quickly or stop the bleeding somehow. Before they could continue their battle further, a smirk came to Zabuza's face. Before Asuma could wonder about what the issue was, he was forced to dodge needles launched at him, and he bit back a curse as the person who had attacked him came from the surrounding forest. No, did she beat them? Did she kill them? He thought to himself worriedly. Haku. Zabuza said as he watched her draw closer to him slowly, keeping her eyes on any move Asuma might make on her master. You certainly took a long enough time to deal with those brats. Had some trouble? Haku nodded. I'm sorry Zabuza-sama. I finished up as quickly as I could after I saw the explosion take place. They were better than they appeared to be. Asuma's eyes widened before he started growling angrily at what Haku was insinuating and was preparing to attack when everyone felt a crushing presence surround them. Asuma immediately had a flashback to 12 years earlier and swallowed down a lump of fear in his throat, realizing who it was. Don't panic. You know who this is, and it might actually be a good thing for this once. He thought with a wait-and-see attitude, all the while preparing for a response, just as an orange blur jumped through the trees and slammed hard into Haku. The movement was so sudden that Zabuza's sword, which he had prepared for an attack, didn't come close to touching the person before whoever it was hit Haku with full momentum and propelled her and himself out of the area away from near Zabuza. Forgetting about Asuma momentarily, Zabuza turned to chase after and attack the newcomer before Haku could be killed. With the power he felt and with the amount of bloodlust he felt from it, he knew that Haku had no chance. Unfortunately, forgetting about Asuma was the last thing he needed to have happen, as it ended abruptly and without warning. For claiming that Haku was just a tool, he certainly cared too much about that tool for one instant, and that was all that someone as wily as Asuma needed. Asuma threw one of his trench knives at Zabuza, and as anticipated he lifted his sword to block it with the flat of the blade. However, with the chakra flow going through the special metal of the weapons, it was more effective than the kunai that he threw earlier, and it pierced through Zabuza's sword, burying itself into his chest up to his sternum. Zabuza's eyes went wide and he let out a gasp as Asuma got around to his side and took an angle before using Hein to cut clean right through him. Zabuza stood perfectly still before a massive spray of blood flew from his torso and he dropped to the ground, cut almost clean in half, dead. So stupid. You didn't have to die here, you idiot, that's why we were here in the first place. Asuma didn't spare him a glance as he began hurrying in the direction that Naruto and Haku came from. I've got to see for myself what happened to Shikamaru and Ino. Naruto can wait for now. Again and again it happened, like clockwork almost. Haku had stopped flying through the air and had almost come to a stop, rolling violently along the ground before trying to get steady and use the momentum to reach her feet, but each time she did she was punted or bashed away further, rather violently, by the orange blur that had hit her in the first place. Eventually her body hit the trunk of a tree with a sickening crack and she slumped to the ground, sitting against it. Behind her mask her eyes were fluttering open and closed before she realized why she had run away from the genin she had been fighting in the first place. She shakily tried to stand up, tasting the blood in her mouth, and knowing that she had broken more than 5 ribs at least in addition to a broken right femur due to almost falling as fast as she stood up. Instincts suddenly started blaring for her to move somehow, and she rolled to the side just as a punch shattered the bark of the tree she had been against and cracked the trunk itself. She was finally able to get a good look at her attacker and fought back a gasp, "Naruto-kun." Naruto growled at her angrily, his appearance now radically different from the boy that had met her not one morning previous. She was unable to see his eyes behind his goggles, but his brow was furrowed in pure malice, his nails were longer and more resembled claws, and his canines were more pronounced and sharper. His spiky blonde hair looked wilder and his whisker marks were thicker and darker than normal. He looked thoroughly enraged from the intense and deadly glare he directed at her. So overwhelmed from the sudden aura of darkness from the boy she was hardly able to reach for her weaponry, but it did her no good anyway, as the senbon that hit him almost immediately dropped from his body to the ground and only elicited an angrier growl from him. He blurred out of her sight, leaving an orange haze in his wake to indicate the direction he had gone in. Haku couldn't even keep her eyes on him as he bounced around the area off of trees, keeping her off balance and leaving a trail of orange that then dissipated into the air. As she looked around, he appeared in front of her and grabbed her around her neck tightly. Haku's eyes behind her mask almost bulged out of her head at the immediate pressure that had been applied from the strangling. Haku desperately clutched at his arm tightly, audibly choking and hacking as he held her off of the ground with his one outstretched arm and shoved her against a tree hard enough to again crack the bark with her body. The intensity of the slam against the tree removed the mask from her face and revealed that tears were coming from her eyes due to the lack of air she was getting. She was barely able to choke out the loose syllables of the phrase, "I'm sorry Naruto-kun." Shutting her now blood-red eyes, she waited for him to finish her as she had seen him cock his fist back prior to shutting her eyes. The smash that followed, she assumed it to be her face, and there was no pain as he hit her hard enough to concuss her to the extent that she couldn't tell how hurt she was. The following 5 smashes then followed soon after as the tension on her neck faded and she was dropped to the ground. She felt wet drops fall on her face and she looked up to expect Naruto's hands to be dripping her blood, but saw him leaning with his forehead against the tree, tears dripping down from the bottom of his goggles. "You killed them." Haku wheezed and gasped for air desperately, having no idea how he didn't kill her from choking her alone. "Why did you stop?" she asked softly, her voice unable to go any higher due to the damage her throat had taken. "I killed your friends. It wasn't supposed to be this way." Naruto yelled as he smashed the tree as hard as he could with his forearm and elbow 3 times. "We didn't have to fight. Geto wasn't going to pay you no matter what you did. Even if you beat us here you still had another whole team to deal with." "Why? Asuma told me to," she said as if she was explaining the reason that the sun rose in the morning. "No matter how I felt about it, it was his command. I am his tool." "Stop saying that." Naruto snapped at her, grabbing her collar and jerking her back to her feet, pushing her against the tree again. "People aren't tools. You're a human being, dammit, and you have free will. All of this could have been avoided if you'd grown a backbone and just spoken up. You know you were wrong, you know that this was stupid, so tell me what was going through your head when you were coming out here." "Let it go, Naruto." Naruto turned his head to see Asuma walking towards him with Ino and Shikamaru over his shoulders. He slowly walked towards him and stopped short by a few feet. Did he beat it back? Did he even know what was happening? No, he somehow calmed down. That's good. He walked directly behind Naruto and looked at Haku, who once she got a look at Asuma looked at him rather pleadingly, asking him a silent question that she knew he had the answer to. Asuma simply shook his head, no pity in his gaze on the girl. Haku looked down, blinking back more tears as the color in her eyes began returning to normal. "I see. Naruto-kun, please kill me." Naruto looked at her in shock before his face turned almost stone-like. "No. You're not getting off that easily," he said, getting her to squirm weakly in his grip that was like iron. Naruto pointed at Ino and Shikamaru on Asuma's shoulders. "You're going to live with that. And you're going to live with Zabuza being dead, just like I have to live with being too weak to protect them the way I was supposed to." Tears started falling from behind his goggles again, and before Haku could dispute and beg for him to kill her again, Naruto grabbed her forehead and abruptly smashed the back of her head against the tree, rendering her unconscious. Naruto picked up her lifeless body and turned back to Asuma. "I'm ready to go back to the house, Asuma-sensei," Naruto said bitterly, listlessly, in a voice that sounded dead. Asuma reached into one of the undamaged pockets of his vest, carefully so as not to disturb Ino or Shikamaru, and stuck a cigarette in the boy's mouth, lighting it for him without a word as he did the same for himself. "And that's why I do this, kid. Not because it's cool but because it's a coping mechanism. You handled this as well as you possibly could have." He motioned with his head and began to carry the other 2 genin back to the house. "Come on." Naruto just stood with the smoke stick in his mouth, not even trying to enjoy it before he finally started moving behind Asuma at a reserved pace. They walked for quite a while, not saying a word between them until they stepped out from the forest, signifying that they were near Tajuna's. As they neared the house they saw slashes on trees in passing and a cut-up boar as well leading towards the house. Gritting his teeth angrily, Naruto looked up at Asuma, who nodded at him that what he wanted to do was okay. He set Haku on one of Asuma's shoulders along with the others and cracked his neck before rushing away in a shunshin. On the main path towards the village from Tajuna's house, the 2 bodyguards of Geto's that wielded katana were leading a tied-up Tsunami who walked with her head down in resignation. She fell to the ground on the offside of the path once she was shoved there by one of them, the one with the eye patch and a lack of a shirt. "We're in no rush, right?" he asked his partner with a sick grin on his face. "All we have to do is make sure the bridge builder's daughter gets there." He didn't say when, and he didn't say that we couldn't have any fun with her either, did he? The white-haired man in the purple hat rolled his eyes. "Fine, just hurry up, dammit. I don't want to be out here all day." Hearing that brat cry and yell for us to not take his mommy pissed me off, useless runt. You could hear him cry from half a mile out while we were leaving. I might have a go myself just to spite the bitch for creating the kid in the first place. The first man began to drag Tsunami until a voice sounded out, please let her go. Both of them looked down the path to see Naruto walking towards them. I'm in a really bad mood right now and I might be overreacting, but what were you about to do to her? The man whose fun had just been interrupted whipped around at Naruto angrily and drew his sword. Whatever the fuck I want, brat. Hold up on Tajuna's daughter for a second, Waraji. The white-haired man said as he drew his own sword, look at the headband. This is one of those ninja brats that Gato told us to kill if we got the chance. They both started stalking slowly towards Naruto. Naruto sighed and flicked open his kunai pouch, putting the men all on edge. Do you know why thugs like you like weapons like those swords you're holding so much? I'm not going to say that it's some inadequacy thing that you guys have with your equipment downstairs because I don't know and I don't really care. He said, getting them to bristle in anger. No, losers like you like weapons because a normal guy is automatically stronger than other normal people with a blade in his hand, and he can make himself rich and feared by pointing it at others with intent to harm. Because with a weapon, even pussies like you can be tough guys if you've got blades in your hands. The man with the eye patch stomped forward angrily in an effort to cut Naruto to pieces but stopped when he heard his partner cry out in alarm from behind him. He turned and saw that another Naruto had appeared behind him and had grabbed him around the waist in his arms, squeezing tight enough to get him to drop his sword on the ground. Waraji, help. Genshi Kyujo, atomic extermination. Naruto's clone lifted the white-haired man up and abruptly jerked his body back to bridge over and slammed the man harshly on his head and neck, leaving it bent at an awkward angle as his body bent over in the direction he was slammed on it in. Waraji was about to move to retaliate on the clone when he heard Naruto's voice in his ear from behind, and what I really hate, is a pussy with a blade in their hands. Kuro ni Utsura, fade to black, ... He lifted his arm high above his head from his perch behind Waraji on his shoulders and slammed his elbow down as hard as he could on the base of his neck. The mouth of the hired thug twisted in agony before he bonelessly dropped to the ground in a heap. Naruto and his clone that had attacked alongside him stared at the two dead men before turning their attention to a clone that was cutting Tsunami loose. Upon being freed, she latched onto the clone for dear life and hugged it tightly. Naruto walked over and dispelled his clones before helping her up. Are you okay? He said with his goggles still down over his eyes. She ignored the cigarette in his mouth as he wasn't even really smoking it, plus he had just saved her life and probably more than that, and nodded, yes. Thank you, you got here just in time. Thank you so much. Naruto's lips quirked slightly before a frown found its way back onto his whiskered face. Well, the hero always arrives at the last minute. He proceeded to assure that Tsunami was alright until he saw Asuma walking down the road, still carrying everyone, only Haku was now tied up. The man seemed to have a serene smile on his face as he walked through, even ignoring the corpses that now littered the path. Naruto walked over to his sensei and began to speak. I kept them from doing anything to Tsunami, Asuma-sensei. Gato tried to kidnap her. I hope you fucked them up. Gato's a prick. A feminine voice said weakly from Asuma's shoulder, getting the man to grin wider. Naruto stood as still as a statue and stared at Ino on Asuma's shoulder. Can you say that again? I think I'm starting to snap. Gato's a prick. The voice said again. Ino weakly lifted her head, locking her blue eyes with Naruto's. I heard you won. She motioned her head weakly to Haku on the other shoulder. I can see that you won too. Way to go, Naruto. She finished with a small smile. Ino. Naruto said as he lifted his goggles off of his face and walked towards her slowly, putting a hand on her neck and feeling her pulse, getting her to arc a delicate eyebrow in confusion. You're really alive. Oh man, don't ever do that again. I've never been so scared in my entire life. He looked over at Shikamaru. What about him? Is he alive too? He started shaking Shikamaru. Shikamaru, speak to me. The boy groaned lowly and kept his head lowered. I finally get an excuse to sleep and the first thing you do is wake me up, you troublesome bastard. A smile grew on Naruto's face and he put his goggles back down over his eyes to hide the tears building in his eyes again, for a positive reason this time. How to train your genin, Tip 7. Appropriate retaliatory force. Moderation for a ninja is important. Use what you need to win and nothing more. Every new shinobi wants to learn the big flashy techniques that they've heard about ever since the concept of nin dash, tai dash, or genjutsu was initially introduced to them, but the knowledge of how and when to use the jutsu is just as important as the hand seals needed to activate the technique in the first place. Jumping into a battle and using your most powerful jutsu, or tool, or whatever is all well and good if your opponent is blind, deaf, and dumb, because any opponent worth a jutsu or technique of that caliber is going to need to be worn down before anything like that would even hit them in the first place unless they're so far below you it works right off the bat, and if that's the case then there was no need for you to even use a jutsu that's strong in the first place. And most powerful jutsu are very chakra costly. Unless you generate chakra like a power plant you might want to keep as much as you can for when you actually need to use it, because most battles are never straightforward. Also, with some ninja they have been shown to be wily enough to reconstruct and reverse engineer certain jutsu from sight and memory. For those of you that are short of memory there's actually an entire Kekai Genkai based off of that single ability, so Jonin Sensei teach your genin squads some discretion. There's a time and a place for everything, and when it's not that time and place you'll know it because you're going to be taking a beatdown when you try it. Shiho. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.